at Newark, just pulling into Newark Airport. And I get, oh, by the way, your 4 o'clock flight is now midnight or something. Fun and games, right? Why not? Why not? Let me turn this off. So
But you got down there and got back.
I got there and I got back, and they did my floor yesterday. As I walked out at 9 o'clock, they came in, and so the living room is all done.
Wow.
Is that the
So
only thing
excited.
you had to have fixed?
No.
The living room floor, I had a hardwood floor, and the water damage
Right.
was over the top, so I got a vinyl floor. Carpet in the master bedroom, a broom closet in the kitchen that they took out and they're gonna put a file cabinet, and the 2 master bath vanities
Oh,
were history.
oh,
And then everything, of course, has molding and painting.
right.
Whatever, et cetera, right?
But they did your floor. So
Yeah.
That's the big job. Oh,
Nice
they're
and
hard at
light,
work.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the living room,
Wow,
dining room, and
yeah.
that's into the lanai. But it was a dark cherry, actual wood floor.
It was beautiful.
But it was too dark.
And George wanted wood, and,
Right.
It's really not good in Florida. I don't know.
Well, we never have
No.
wood. That was it.
Too
Yeah.
much humidity.
We'll finally have wood, but, the vinyl's so much better.
It looks like wood. They've really
Right,
improved those floors.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Greg had this core lock, he calls it,
Mhm.
is the brand, and he, not this color, but he had it, so when he went down, we looked at different things.
I've got in my library, we put wood every place else, but in there, I just wanted to cut some cost, and we put vinyl in there. And it's like almost 17 years old now, and it's really nice looking.
Right,
It
right.
holds up, you can mop it really easy.
Right, yeah,
It's-
I just like the white vinegar and
looks
water,
like-
like
Yeah, it looks like wood.
with that's what I have in my living room. And where else do I have it?
Oh,
Guess in
at
the
Cedar
bedrooms
Crest.
At Cedar
Yeah,
Crest,
Oh, here you are.
Okay.
I'm just checking to see if there's anyone on Zoom that I can welcome in.
Paulette, she wasn't here last night.
No, I know. I think she said, there's a Bible study at her church that she wants to join in, and it's in person. Oh, it's today. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't know. Welcome to live stream to our listening audience. Following along, we are on Wednesday mornings here at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. I'm Pastor Lou. We have been reading and have caught up to 47, Isaiah chapter 47. And this is, you'll hear as we read into it, God is now going to, through the prophet Isaiah, God is going to address Babylon. And he's going to say some things to Babylon. And I know ages have gone by and cultures are different. There's just a lot about this I find very troubling. But we could talk about that on the other side. Barbara, you want to read?
Sure.
I asked Debbie to read twice last night. So welcome to those of you who are listening along. You can join the conversation on a Zoom. We have a Zoom set up here. And just email me at revlouis@aol.com if you'd like to do that. And you can email your comments, questions, and things. You can participate in that way. So here we go. Isaiah 47, reading with our brains turned on.
Come down and sit in the dust, virgin daughter Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, daughter Chaldea, for you shall no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Remove your veil. Strip off your robe, uncover your legs, pass through the rivers, your nakedness shall be uncovered, and your shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will spare no one. Our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts, is his name, as the Holy One of Israel. Sit in silence and go into darkness, daughter Chaldea, for you shall no more be called the mistress of kingdoms. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage. I gave them into your hand. You showed them no mercy. On the aged you made your yoke exceedingly heavy. You said, I shall be mistress forever, so that you did not lay these things to heart or remember their end. Now therefore hear this, you lover of pleasures, who sit securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, or know the loss of children. Both these things shall come upon you. In a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood shall come upon you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries and the great power of your enchantments. You felt secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge led you astray, and you said in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. But evil shall come upon you, which you cannot charm away. Disaster shall fall upon you, which you will not be able to ward off. And ruin shall come on you suddenly, on which you know nothing. Stand fast in your enchantments and your many sorceries, with which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you may be able to succeed. Perhaps you may inspire terror. You are wearied with your many consultations. Let those who study the heavens stand up and save you. Those who gaze at the stars and at each new moon predict what shall befall you. See, they are all like stubble. The fire consumes them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame. No coal for warming oneself is this, no fire to sit before. Such to you are those with whom you have labored, who have trafficked with you from your youth. They all wander about in their own paths. There is no one to save you. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Somebody's vengeful, would you say?
I think it's it's a fascinating bit of theologizing on the part of the author. This is the same author who said that Babylon was coming as the arm of God, coming to bring discipline to a people who had wandered into selfishness and self-exploitation, had abandoned the mission of being a blessing to the people of the earth, and God was going to see to it they were going to be punished. And so the images, God raised up Babylon. Now the prophet is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You went way beyond your mission. you went too far, you took it too seriously, you thought that you were in charge, there was no one watching what you were doing, and your brutality towards this people. Now Isaiah is coming around and going, ooh, bad Babylon. And also, there's some serious swipe at science in here. He mocks the gazers at stars. And, the Babylonians were famous for science and mathematics, for a kind of, I don't want to say independence almost, from the trappings of primitive religion. They leaned a lot on, studying the heavens, making formulations. They probably had weather forecasters. I don't know. Now here goes old Isaiah, who all of a sudden is a hater of everything that the Babylonians do, their culture. And I just have a very hard time. I know it's commonplace, but the city of Babylon is pictured as a woman, a young woman, a virgin, and the image of her desecration is very graphic. She's going to be stripped naked, have to walk through the streets naked, and I think, oh my goodness, come on, Isaiah, isn't there some other way to express
Displeasure.
this displeasure? I mean,
Well,
Blame
at
it on the
first
woman.
You think he's talking about the Hebrews, if you didn't read that first couple of sentences, because that's the kind of language he uses for his own
he had
people.
just been talking like that to them.
Right, and now he's dissatisfied with, this is not the same writer. This can't be, because you need to have a bigger space of time to, to see Babylon is our, savior, our saving grace, and then to turn around and say Babylon is, the horror of Babylon. I mean, it's like, it reminds me of Revelation.
Yeah.
Poor Babylon always gets trashed. But as far as these ancient regimes go, they're all pretty much interchangeable. They start out small and raid and pillage and get bigger, and then they in turn fall to some other, nearby, neighbor, and that's the way it goes. I mean, but there has to be more time. It can't be just in Isaiah's lifetime.
Yeah, no, and
I don't
that
think
question of what is Isaiah's lifetime is a big
Right.
question. If you look it up, even in the study Bible, you'll see, Isaiah spans a long period of history.
Is he Methuselah?
Yeah, he spans the period
It's
from
900 years.
the collapse of the Jewish nation, then through the Assyrian time. He talks and writes about the Assyrians, which I think was almost several hundred years. Then he writes, and now here he is weighing in on Babylon, and he's also going to be talking about Cyrus next. He's going to be talking about, and so there's a very long period of time.
Jumps around. So
Yeah.
it seems that it's who's ever writing, there's probably many writers, and it gets put into this book of Isaiah.
But it's not even chronological
No.
within the book.
No,
which
it mixes all around.
So it's hard to keep track. But,
And I don't know where the breaks are, because none of our general population Bibles have the courage to put first Isaiah, second Isaiah, and third Isaiah. But the
okay.
scholars clearly identify 3 separate books.
Okay.
And that's part of why, even within those books, there are traces of writers from different traditions. And, every time I say something like that, I still have to mentally apologize to my parents and my religious ancestors who thought, well, Lou, you're Babylon now, because you've abandoned the whole faith. The faith, naive as it is, but determined as it was, this is all inerrant and
didn't say inerrant and chronological.
no, but that's implied. I mean, you start from the beginning.
What is it? I've never read the Hebrew Bible I read the 5 books of Moses, but they don't go chronologically either, do they?
No,
Yeah,
no,
so
because the
this is
compilation
much
here follows the
the
Hebrew Bible. I mean,
Right.
because it was translated from the Hebrew.
Right.
So they translate as they go along it wasn't really until the documentary hypothesis, which was, I don't know, the late 1960s. Think about that. It wasn't until the 1960s that the documentary hypothesis was done, because they began to do scientific linguistic analysis of the text. The same way as they would of, the Gilgamesh epic that was found, in separate areas. This hands off on this. This was not critique with literary critique until the seminaries, especially Union Seminary here in New York, and some of the other, San Francisco Seminary, began to have on their staff linguistic scholars. And they began to do with the Bible what you would do even with, I don't know, Shakespeare, and understanding all the cultural, the style of writing and authorship, challenge of authorship. There are documents that were supposed to be written by Shakespeare, and they can prove that they haven't been. And so this is when the whole, it seems like polarization is the word of the day, right? Because as the seminaries, some of the seminaries began to use literary critique, then the fundamentalist churches said, you're Babylon. You are using science, and you can't do that because you saw, like, the Scopes trial, that science was beginning to be perceived as detrimental to the essence of faith. You didn't need all of that. So the camps were created, the fundamentalist camps, and the varieties of them, the fundamentalist camps, which said, hey, we just take it as word. We just take it for what it says, and we don't even need commentaries. You just say a prayer for enlightenment before you read it, and what it means to you is what it means. which pushed them in a further direction away from any attempt to understand, as the Germans, Sitzenleben, the situation of life in which this was written. And to the fundamentalist preachers and teachers, and some of the new seminaries were born. Dallas Theological Seminary in Texas is a bastion of Christians who refuse to allow the context to inform them about what the text means. And that's their hallmark of faith. God is going to speak to them. The Presbyterian Church split right in half. And even like Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia, the movement, a lot of the disagreement was around literary criticism of the Bible. And if you were a pastor and you were interviewing for a church and you were asked about the documentary hypothesis, if you said that you accepted it, you weren't going to work, except in liberal churches.
Yeah, I thought a lot of the arguments between the factions in the church were generated by the Jesus Seminar, and based mainly on studying the New Testament. I had no idea that they were fighting also about, the whole thing.
Yeah, well, the Jesus Seminar actually came as a kind of, if you follow the development within the scholars that were willing to do literary criticism, once it was underway, that was a kind of coalescing to say, look, let's do this for real. Let's go and see if we can find will the real Jesus please stand up? Can we eliminate all of the writings in the New Testament that we know cannot be sourced to Jesus? And some of those scholars asked, did he even exist? Like, was it And so once that started, then the conservatives knew.
I know.
Oh my God, they knew. Oh, that is
That's
bunch,
what I thought, the big.
Someone
that is
pull
a
the
bunch of
plug.
garbage. But I have to say also, within the American theological schools, they didn't go as far as like the Jesus movement went. They're willing to read about it and be informed by it, but they thought that it was extreme. They thought it was counting too much on a reliability of a science of literary criticism, which wasn't really that specific. You know, it's still a lot of hypothesis.
Sure.
And so the Jesus movement kind of came, and then it kind of, you know, but what's left is still a strong context critique of what we read. And I'm so far in my own positions from, you know, the place where my father as a pastor graduating from Bible school, and even I know where I should be because that's where the rest of my family still is. You know, this
Should
idea,
be?
yeah, it should be,
Or
and
could be.
from their
Or
point,
could
or it could
be.
be,
Yeah.
you know, and
Would be.
I understand it. I understand it. I say to, you know, to our listening audience, I keep trying to find the words to say, we're trying to read the Bible. My senior pastor in Ewing used to say, when you come to church, remember to bring your brain with you, you know. And I say, when you're going to read the Bible, remember to bring your brain with you. Bring your brain along. And I've been mentally tripping and falling to the ground over, last past Saturday was my 50th high school reunion. And I went to the reunion and I met, you know, friends there, and my one friend, surprised that I was a pastor, came up to confess, you know, that he's not really involved in church. He sees himself as a spiritual person, but church doesn't reach it, you know. He'd rather do it on his own. And so they walked away, and then he came back and he goes, look, let me give you an example.
There's guilt there, he's walking back.
Yeah, well, but he wanted me to understand, and so I used this story in my sermon this Sunday. Because he didn't know I was preaching on the Ten Commandments. And he came back and he said, look, let me just give you an example. In the Ten Commandments, is it the third or fourth commandment? It says, you know, do not covet, and it says, do not covet your neighbor's slave. And he looked at me and I went, yeah, and he goes, why would they have slaves? And why would the commandments from God include a sort of acknowledgement of slavery? He goes, and he says, aren't these the people that just last week were delivered from slavery? And have they already managed here?
Well, he's using his brain.
Yeah, he's using his brain, and that gets you in trouble, you know?
No,
And I said, well, so,
I'm surprised he didn't ask which 10 Commandments are you looking at?
yes, I know,
Couple of
there's
sets,
a couple. And I said, so what are you saying? And he goes, well, here's what I'm saying. If it's going to be 10 Commandments, how about do not make slaves of other human beings? How about that? And at that point, I'm like, I got nothing to say to that, because I agree with him. And I've been carrying that around. I agree. You're going to give, so here you are, God of heavens and the mountains and the earth and everything, and you want to give some guidelines for human beings for how to live, right? What about just don't make slaves of other human beings? Just don't do that.
Depends on whether you actually believe that God handed these to Moses, or whether through inspiration Moses came up with these. And
Yeah, but in the
15, oops, 10.
the version of the giving that we did in the text was not even written down. It was the verbal expression, the voice from the mountain that came out and said, these are my encouragements to you. That's how I translate it. These are the guardrails, these are the signposts for your life, for your living. And then the people said, we We don't want to hear anything from you, God. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, talk to Moses. Talk to the Moses. Let him talk to us.
The nut climbing up the hill, what do we want?
So how are we to bring our minds into this
Yeah.
passage? And what are we to make of this? Isaiah, come on. Will you stand still? I don't. Now all of a sudden God, back 5 chapters ago, God is using Babylon as a rod, a punishment rod, to bring deeper understanding and confession or whatever to the children of Israel. And now Babylon is going to be punished for doing it. Well, it's because you went too far. You killed children. You killed children.
But why would Babylon be any different from any other regime? They can do good stuff, they can do crummy stuff. You're not gonna, if you're talking about hundreds of years, there's lots of rulers, good
Yeah.
ones, bad ones,
And
everything in between.
we have very present day reference to the fact that when groups of people develop a certain mindset, the children especially mean nothing. I mean, these accounts coming out of the children mean nothing. I don't care idea-wise or ideologically, I don't care what your thoughts are, what your political passion is, what your grievances are. If you have grievances about being mistreated, right? How do you then get light and air on your grievance by brutalizing infants?
And it's really hard to convince yourself, it's justifiable.
Right.
It's never justifiable.
It's not.
Right.
It isn't. There isn't.
And what you've done now is to push your own people back decades. I mean, you are not going to negotiate anything from that position.
No.
It's horrible, and just the inhumanity of it. If you're complaining about Israel's inhumanity, how do you turn around and do
Yeah,
one worse? I mean,
Right. And I think there's something of that right here in this text. There's something of that here in terms of look at how this happens. You know, as you said, one regime comes along and can be seen as maybe being corrective to even to Israel. Israel in this time period, it's documented by their own documents that Israel became an oppressive regime. They did. They were brutal to their neighbors, and they said, well, it's in self-defense. Well, it went way beyond self-defense, and then the Assyrians come, and the Assyrians say, oh, well, you've collected a lot of wealth from your neighbors. We're going to come and get it. And the prophets, people say, what's going on, God? And the prophets go, well, what'd you expect? You deserve it. And then how much do we deserve? Well, all right, you've been punished enough. So then I'm gonna have Babylon come along and conquer the Assyrians. And look at the Babylonians. They're people of wisdom. But they took the underclass and abused them, killed their children, killed generations of children. And then Isaiah says, well,
Is there anything new under the sun?
no, I don't think there is.
Right.
I don't think there is. And I thought there was. I thought that I thought that somehow we had moved out of the mold of what it is to be human. They were interviewing one woman. The commentators, I think, are just being brutal with taking their cameras and their microphones into the victims. And she said, I'm embarrassed to be a human being today. You know, this is an assault. This isn't about Palestinians or Jewish people. This is
About humanity.
This is inhumane. It's gone beyond the bounds.
And we think, well, we're far apart from all of that. We're not brutal. But we have a whole bunch of people who sit and think it's fine to say we cherish life, we honor children and then turn around and and not help them when they're hungry or, when they need an education. How is that? I mean, that's so hypocritical too. And it's hard to, it's here. It's in everywhere.
It is.
Exists. And you just hope that there are more people who are more benevolent to overcome those thoughts, but sometimes you can't.
No.
And this is what you get.
No,
When people are brutal towards other people, what can you expect in return? It's awful.
Yeah, and when human beings become convinced of the rightness of their way,
Watch out.
it hasn't happened in a while, but, these people going around shooting doctors who were offering abortion services, shooting them,
In the name
killing
of
them.
life.
Yeah,
Right,
the insanity of the way we get to thinking when we're convinced, A, that we're right, and that we're convinced that our point of view is for the betterment of humanity. That's also the weird thing is there are these passionate movements that have landed pregnant women in jail. Like,
Right.
what? Or victims of rape. Really? A young girl's been raped, and now you're going to pass a law on the public books that tells her now. So now she's being raped again. Like now she's lost her choice again, completely. Don't you understand that?
She's like 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you understand that? Do you not understand? Do you not even think about that? But I can't.
And then it gets worse when they do these things, when we do these things in the name of God.
Yes.
That just makes people even more fervent about we're right. We have God on our side.
Right. I've been watching the Northern Ireland PBS special
That was depressing.
talking to people on either side, and what I watched yesterday was they finally voted, which I knew that George Mitchell had done something to get people together, but I didn't realize when they actually voted that it was like 85% voted to come together, which was a miracle.
Out of all of that nonsense that went before it, yeah.
And that was in the name of God, because it's two different religion, it was a
Well,
religious
yeah.
fight.
Yeah, was it? No.
Well, no,
It was
It's
a,
one
political.
religion.
it was a political.
it was a political, and
Yeah.
who has power and money, who
Right.
gets the better jobs,
Right. Right.
It's never about theology. You don't see people wielding weapons saying, now what do you think about the divinity of Jesus?
Right,
It's not that. And if they claim it's about
right.
religion, it's just about
A
who has
religious war.
power, who's in power, who's not,
Mhm.
and.
Who's
how
on top.
cruel. Yeah, exactly.
Who's the ruler? Who's making the rules, and who's has to follow the rules?
Usually
But
see battles erupting other than words in the theological seminaries. They don't usually pick up arms and kill each other. It's not theology.
right.
That's always a ruse.
Well, it's never, the real battle is never fought in the seminaries, but Walter Brueggemann said of the Presbyterian Book of Order, there's blood on every page.
People fought against, but
Because
again, I
it's-
question whether it's actually about the theology proper or what comes with it.
Yeah.
Which side has more power? I mean, even all the 100 Years' wars in, Europe, most of the time it's about who's
The
powerful.
Crusades,
Yeah, they have something we want, we're gonna get it. Or
right.
we don't like their pope, or we don't want that pope telling us what to do, or I wanna marry 6 wives. It's always about something
Me.
other than theology.
Control,
It
power.
seems to me, I
Yeah.
might be right, I just don't think it's ever about,
Well, I agree with you completely. I just would say that's what theology is.
well, it is
See,
political.
I don't separate, theology is just how do we talk about God? And we often talk about God what other perspective do we have except our own human way? So that's why I always say theology is always theology from below. It's always human beings creating and crafting theology to look upward and be able to describe what God is like. Unfortunately, what that means is that most of the results up here, what we arrive at, come from the common struggles and battles that we have as human beings.
That's why the Ten Commandments can talk about slavery and not blink an eye, because it was acceptable to human beings. I don't know how much of God is even in those 10 Commandments.
But see, you can't say that.
Well, I can say it, maybe,
Yeah.
don't come after
But
me.
I,
You're
so,
gonna come after me
I
all
understand what
over
you're
again.
saying, but realize, so for me, to sort it out in my brain, the Bible tells a narrative, it's a story, and it has a back story and a middle story, and then it's got the forward story. So where are we in the story? Where are we? We're at the place right after God has announced that slavery is wrong. And Egypt, in its belief in slavery, maybe not for everybody, I guess, but at least for the Abrahamic tradition, slavery's got to end. So they've freed the slaves. And those slaves now are just now wandering. They're only like, I picture them 2 weeks into the wilderness. And then the roaring commands of God come from the top of Ararat, and in the voice of God, they hear God say, don't lust after your neighbor's slaves. And by the way, some translations, recognizing that problem, changed it to wife.
Yeah,
Don't lust after your neighbor's wife.
well, what is a wife but a maidservant?
Wow.
Well, I mean, you were a property of your father and
Yep,
then the property
yep.
of your husband. And that's not a really ancient thing.
No, that's not
pretty recent.
gone that far. But the word is slave. It could have been translated slave if it meant
Maidservant or manservant.
it was slave. But the translators
Didn't like that.
saw this problem and changed it to wife.
It depends.
To make it more
depending on
palatable.
when that translation
Yeah.
took place, because if they're fighting a civil war about slavery, you don't want to, or any other issue. It all comes back to political stuff. It's like,
And so the Grove City College where I went they had a religion department, and Dr. Hofecker was there. He didn't like philosophy that much. I was a philosophy major, but he had graduated from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary and Brown University. And his whole thing was, he just came into this whole thing of the inerrancy of the Bible with a great kind of wonder. And his thing was, look how cool this is that we have this book, which is the objective standard. This is it. This is the standard by which all human life is to be judged. You don't turn around and judge it. You accept it for what it is, and you let it read your life and how great it is that, we're on this spaceship Earth, but we've managed to get, by God's word, he was eloquent in this,
but I can understand that point of view. It's more comforting.
Yeah, but how do you stay consistent with it if you
You
actually
can't.
read it?
And
We
also
go through it and we go,
because you know
okay.
There's so many translations where words have been changed and the whole meaning of what you're reading is changed by one or two words. And that's the argument of the Quran. We have not changed a single word, a single diacritical mark at all.
Well,
But
that's,
you still don't understand exactly what,
right.
and there's still different interpretations. And people are still arguing today over what this means, what that means.
It's the same as
it's the fault of
Christianity.
us human
It
beings.
is, it's our human nature.
Right.
I come out of the religion department classes and go over to Dr. Trammell in the philosophy department. He was a brilliant, brilliant philosopher. And he would always have on the top of his board those letters that form God is now here and you look at it with no spacing, and it says God is now here or God is nowhere. Same letters, same spaces,
Right.
and it depends on what you see. It depends, and so the philosophy department then, of course, you know, and he used to start out all of his philosophy 101 classes. You'd just been to Religion 101, where you had the optimism of the inerrancy people, right?
That's optimistic.
And you come over to his class, and he says, now I'm going to start off right away and try to eliminate arguments in this class. Anybody who believes the Bible is inerrant, if you believe the Bible is inerrant, make an appointment with me after class today, and I will prove to you that the Bible is not inerrant. I'll prove it to you in a way that you will not be able to disagree. There's no way around it. How many people would like an appointment after class? And what he would tell you was, no one ever took him up on it.
Really?
It-
Everybody's
Now,
frightened.
I can't say I did, a group of us did. We went to him and we said, come on, what do you do? And he took us to Leviticus, where it says that a rabbit chews its cud. And you think, well, that doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. It means something. And it meant something to me coming from, you know, the totally inerrant. And then all of a sudden the excuses begin to roll out. Well, the Bible never claimed to be inerrant about science. There was no exception. There's no, my dad's bumper sticker on his car was, God said it, I believe it, that settles it.
There you go.
So in that mindset, rabbits do chew their cud. I don't care what the biologists say.
Didn't they try and say, well, they meant a different animal?
No, there was
The
no
cud of
explanation.
something.
There's no way around it. You know, that the food that was forbidden to be eaten was that you were not allowed to eat the meat of any animal that chews its cud.
But cows chew their.
I know.
Was cloven hoof, I think, was okay.
Cloven hoof was also, yeah, I don't know what it was, but one of them, cloven hoof was no. But chewing the cud also was an indicator of either yes or no. I think it was no.
I'm not so sure at this point.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Because I'm just thinking, the dietary laws of the you know, kosher
Yeah, they
laws.
couldn't eat pigs.
No, you can't eat pigs because they eat they eat other animals.
Right. But you could eat,
You couldn't eat lobsters
you
because
you
of that.
could eat
because they-
cows.
Your
Yes.
bottom feeders.
Yeah, there's all kinds of weird rules, but,
Is it all shellfish?
no, I think it's,
Because I thought shrimp also, no?
I
Is-
think shrimp are okay. You know,
Yeah.
I'll have to ask,
Yeah.
because it's very confusing, and there's all different levels of kosher.
Right.
And some of them go so far as to, we just had a meal together, and some of the Jewish ladies brought from the kosher market, and they said it's all sealed, it's washed and sealed. The salad you think is innocuous. If it has any organism in there, like a worm or something that you didn't catch, you're not eating kosher, you can't eat that. So they buy the salad in these pouches that, you know, they vacuum seal
Right.
them and.
They gas them, then they vacuum them.
Yeah, and you're like, here's the salad, and it's this plastic thing that's been crushed, and it's like, really? Are you?
Really?
And the other Jewish ladies are like, that we don't pay any attention to that, but they do. They even disagree amongst themselves. I mean, they got to the point, at one point, where some of the Hasidim in New York weren't drinking the tap water because they said there could be organisms in the tap water, and everybody at the table was laughing about that, even the ladies who keep, you know, block kosher, extra kosher. So it's like, I guess, you know, it's not inerrant. There's stuff in there
Yeah,
that one
there's just-
person interprets one way and somebody another way.
Well, and it gets worse as my life goes on. It gets worse. Like people say, oh, that's one little thing. No. You do what I've done over the years and read all the way through,
Right.
and you begin to compare. Well, wait a minute. I was just told that it was David that killed Goliath, and then you get 4 chapters later where it names someone else who killed Goliath.
Right, or is it Goliath?
And-
Isn't it
yeah, is
Goliath's
it-
brother, or it's like, whoa, what?
It
Yeah.
just, so that, and I know why people don't do it. I mean, I've had people in Bible studies like this who will hear what I'm saying and they hear the issues. Just like in seminary and in graduate school, you have people who get up and walk out of the class and they drop the course. And they do it because they say, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that.
Ignorance is bliss.
And I had one friend in seminary.
That doesn't
What?
negate the message that's in there. That to me is like, it's trivia, it's, okay, this is an interesting thing, but it doesn't, refute the message that goes through.
If
The
you
message of being a
if you
blessing.
don't believe that everything is exactly what it said,
Yeah, it doesn't spoil
literal.
it for me. I mean, because there are human beings writing these things.
No, there aren't.
Well, I know.
This is the Holy Spirit, and that's why I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but you're not already starting from the premise that says this entire thing is God-breathed.
In the
And
Quran,
you're-
God is
Yeah.
talking to Angel Gabriel, Jibrail, who is speaking directly to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that, so, but
Yeah.
there's still, it's still not, to me, it's like, okay, I get it, why don't we just stop arguing over all these little points and say, isn't there an inspiring message, though, in the scriptures that we have? Are we ignoring them because we find some discrepancies?
Oh, I understand what you're saying, but the whole premise of how the purpose of a book like this is that you say, well, there's a message, but is that message reliable? If this can happen in this part, is any of what is claimed, okay, it sounds good in my ears, but if it isn't true, if it's somehow made up by someone else, it's the whole issue of the authority for the message. It's not just an inspired teacher or preacher who comes along with a message that sounds good. And so the Muslim claim about not one jot, not one accent, it's the same. But what's interesting is the places where Paul explains not one line of the biblical word is supposed to be altered. He's not talking about the New Testament, because the New Testament didn't even exist then. The only part, he's now talking about the inerrancy of the Hebrew scripture, and that is profitable. He says it is profitable for correction and reproof. I get that. I think this is profitable for correction and reproof. You can see it. It calls you up. It can accuse your life. It can say, look at how we behave. Don't behave like this. But
That's
The-
the message
the-
you should take.
yeah,
Not that, oh, that was written before this, how could that be? And that does cause people, if you're gonna believe the inerrantness, the inerrant word of God, can't change a thing, don't think about it, then of course you're gonna be hostile to science, because science is gonna come along and say, maybe you've interpreted something wrong, maybe you got something wrong. That doesn't spoil the scripture for me, though, something.
no, it doesn't for me either, obviously. But it does for a lot of people. It does. And, in some ways what you're saying, which is, oh, this is minutia and it doesn't matter, that's also what they say. They say that by saying, I don't want to hear about it.
Right,
I don't want to. And when does it become important? It becomes important when your son comes to you and tells you he's gay. And you've been told that the message is, that men having sex with men is an abomination to God. And you've never, ever entertained the fact that it might be worth it for you to look into the origins of such teachings and to spare your son and to spare his life. That's where the rubber hits the road. There are people who will tell you that the Bible teaches that abortion is a sin. I want to go, really? Where? You mean like when Sarah and Abraham put their first child out in the desert to die. Oh, you mean that?
Well, that wasn't Sarah's child.
I know. It wasn't Sarah's child. It was,
God told Hagar.
yeah, it was Hagar's child, and Sarah didn't like that child. And that's not even in the womb.
But that's not an abortion, see?
I know, that's infanticide.
Yeah, that is. That's
So-
a no-no, but, but, actually, Jewish teachings doesn't, say abortion is wrong up to a certain point. Same thing in Islam.
Yeah,
It's
which is why we adopted that more common sense kind of approach for years.
Especially if the wife, if the mother's life
Yes.
is in jeopardy.
Right.
But up until a certain point, and it's usually around 3-4 months, they say it's okay.
Yeah.
And then why now this fervor about, from the moment of conception? How do you know when that is, by the way?
Well, I think it's because the mood of the world is for, I would call objectivism. It's done with vagaries. There's a dogmatism. That dogma is right, and
So
don't
the only
ask.
way is to be sure, is to
Yeah.
say right from,
And it's in every country. It's in every system. America is embroiled in this kind of a controversy about science has led us astray. Like I don't know.
then you go to can science and God coexist? Well, yeah.
No,
The
always
more we
has.
find out, I think
Yeah.
the more it kind of tends to say there's God in the works and
Yeah.
not the opposite for me. But
To me, what science tells us and the witness of Scripture move hand in hand. There's no contradiction. But there are people who know how to make it a contradiction.
are we getting into like vast troubles with because you said they have stepped in and blocked some of these?
Yeah. Now, the only time I've gotten any from YouTube was that we had that one discussion where Miss Pat was talking about, what did she say? And it sounded like,
Don't say it.
no, I won't, I blocked it out. But she,
Really?
yeah, she ventured into an area of political, it was about vaccines.
Oh,
It
that's
was
right,
about
yeah,
vaccines, and they misunderstood what she was saying,
Oh, okay.
and they thought that we were discussing
We were anti-vax.
anti-vax, and that, I know, she mentioned the, Dr. Evil, Fauci. There, I did it, I mentioned him, and they blocked it, they took it off, they took it down.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Which
I
was
guess-
creepy.
And here you go, it's politics. I'm telling you, it's not theology. They didn't
No,
worry about
no.
that. They
But
were worried about
I
politics.
had no idea. I mean, I should know.
Yeah.
Those computer banks out in the middle of Colorado that listen to every word that's ever said, that's,
Is that where they?
yeah,
make
I think
those
that's where they
decisions?
are, isn't it?
I don't know. I have no idea. Big Brother is watching, but I didn't know he was watching from Colorado.
Able to contain and sort through quadbillions
Oh,
of
boy.
data and information and words.
Well, I guess so. If a word
And
pops
that,
up,
and
they
there's
take it
hot
out of
words,
context.
it's how they fight terrorism. But it's also,
Yeah.
it's also how they block people from saying what they want to say. And,
Yeah.
and as I said, the worst of it was a misunderstanding.
Right.
She was not
was the
speaking against
opposite.
Dr. Fauci. She was
Right.
not speaking against vaccinations at all.
Absolutely.
And if we were being held accountable to it, I know lots of websites that, but I guess it wasn't through YouTube. So-
Oh, gosh.
So
Oh, no.
just to sum up, according to Isaiah, now the Babylonians, the people of science and art and culture, will be like stubble. The fire consumes them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame. No coal for warming oneself is this. Oh, no fire to sit by. This is the fire that's going to burn you. Such to you are those with whom you have labored, who have trafficked with you from your youth. They all wander in their own paths, and there is no one to save them.
Somebody's angry with Babylon.
Are all the fire comments, is that where the idea of hell was fire came from?
I would say no. I would say the idea, if you're looking for the ultimate punishment, just really in life, you want to look for the ultimate punishment of human being, burn them.
Yeah.
And burn them alive. That's, that's been a popular choice. You know?
Through the years.
Yeah, because,
No one expects a
Oh,
Spanish.
the witch.
yeah, I mean,
Witch hunt,
yeah,
too.
the problem with, killing your enemy is, once they're dead, you can't hurt them anymore.
Right.
But you got a body. If you burn them, there's nothing. Maybe that's.
I know, but
complete
in the journey to
annihilation.
death, if you burn them alive, you get to savor the,
Really?
you asked.
There are people, and like people going to lynchings, you
Well,
see, people
You have
sit
to
or,
believe that that's not another person, that's a thing. Because how could you stand there and watch and be
or
entertained?
decapitation,
Oh,
or,
look at
all
Rome, the Colosseum. Oh,
Oh,
let's
right.
go watch the animals tear,
right, the
people limb from
gladiators.
limb.
Yeah.
Come on. Okay, we do watch TV, and everything you can think of is depicted, and we're entertained by it. Are
You
we
might
not?
be, not me. I don't like all that.
But it's
blood
not
and
real.
guts.
I don't know how people could have watched it for I don't know. Anyway, but
I
we
mean-
don't understand because we're far removed, and some things are very much the same, and some things are not. Violence is an entertainment. Look at what we watch. Look at the sports are
Right, right.
just,
But
Violence.
I got whammed in my brain a little bit yesterday with this, because I spent some time watching the news reports about the brutality and the massacre, and, sat wondering and watched as long as I could, listened to the mother talk about her daughter being taken away and wondering where she is, and then that evening, the new Tom, who's the action figure, who was Top Gun? Tom Cruise.
All right.
Tom Cruise has a new movie out, and it's like Mission Impossible. And so I've just been watching the real life story
Right.
of these men who paratrooped into a rock concert and just annihilate everybody. And I know that's real, and I'm revolted. I'm just, and then I'm watching for entertainment, and there's a scene where there are guys who have machine guns, and they're just mowing people down. And I think to myself, well, that's because it's a narrative story, and in the narrative story, we always make the good guys win. I mean, they may lose for a while, they may slide down the hill, but in the end, all the shooting and all the fighting and all the screaming and everything is going to result in the end, it's going to result in something better. So that's how, and I think,
no, it's gonna result in
can't-
a lot of dead people.
I can't even imagine being on the set of these movies.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Where they stage these things and
Well,
the gunfire but, we're fascinated by it.
Sure.
And then when it happens in real life, we have a hard time breaking out of the fascination of pretend into realizing it actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
And we like good versus bad, but who's good and who's bad? I mean, we think we know, but do
Well,
we?
again, taking things out of context and not realizing why are people doing what they're doing. It,
And one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist, and vice
Right.
versa. But violence, for real, violence on TV, I watch it, but violence for real is like, where does it get you? It just
Right.
gets you a lot of dead people.
Right,
It's just, to me, it's just awful to try and justify that kind of violence and say, oh, but, you know, it's gonna further our cause. What's your cause? World death? I mean, what is your cause? I can't understand, no matter how justifiable your cause may be, that is the wrong thing to do. And I understand how it happens, because you see your kids do it. They get frustrated and all of a sudden, bam, they punch their brother or sister. Oh, I've had enough. Well, that's human. It's human, but does it make it right? Then the parent has to go in and say, tell me, fighting never makes it right. And then we engage in war.
yes,
So
right.
we're hypocrites ourselves. I mean, it's like, we know what's the right thing, but it's so hard to do it sometimes.
Yeah, we are enormously inconsistent. We have, again, go back to my days of seminary, in some of the family counseling, they talked about the built-in inconsistency of a parent who watches their children, and the one child gets frustrated with the other child and hits them. Yet then, as parents, we were nurturing each other to say, if you don't hit your children to discipline them, then, you know, they're going to grow up to be, and this is right in front of us. You know, here we are, and so in the lesson, they're saying you can't teach what you don't do. You can't teach, because I can still hear, you know, parents saying, we don't hit each other here. And if a child had the chutzpah to say it, they would go, really? I think we do. I think we do hit each other here. So I have to tell you, at that point, different than my entire family, I made a vow. I would never hit my child. Never. I don't care how frustrated I got. I was not going to hit them. People say, well, your child's going to grow up spoiled. You know what? Children get spoiled. All of them do. And, you know,
Violence does not bring.
no. What do you want to teach them?
This is not logic
Yeah,
or
no.
philosophy.
We'll have a good time.
That's
I'm
right.
telling you.
We will not hit each other in this family. Wow. Okay.
But it's what we do on a grand scale. I don't know. And it's hard to say, well, a just war. World War II. Should we not have gotten involved?
Yeah,
I
I
find
mean-
it hard to say, no, we should have been pacifists. We should have just sat
Right.
by and watched people be murdered.
Yeah, I would never say that. I
Yeah,
just,
I have a hard time.
but when you move off of that illustration and you move
Right.
to, you know, on the way here in NPR, they were having discussion with, I don't know, some of the officials in Israel, and they were making public the debate which is going on in Israel right now, which is, we need to find a way to express our absolute rejection of what has happened to us, but we cannot be promoters of the same kind of violence. We cannot. We have to figure out a way to, you know, and I don't know that there is one. After 9/11 and the towers came down, and I was absolutely convinced that America was going to make the biggest mistake of its life, because I could listen to the vengeance and the and also they made the decision too quick, and they made a mistake. They went in the wrong direction.
I don't think they cared that they made a mistake.
No, they didn't, because in the end it was going to work out. Yeah,
They're not,
it was going to
the
work out all right for
intelligence
them.
did not say it was Saddam
No.
Hussein.
No.
Bush did not like Saddam
Right.
Hussein.
And so it gave the entire country a vent, a way to vent, to say,
Right.
and I don't blame Israel right now either. The grief, oh my goodness, you know, I work in grief counseling, and the biggest risk for people who have experienced massive complicated grief is making big decisions in the middle of that grief. Because you will bring grief upon grief into your life. And one of the big reactions to death is anger. anger does not lead you to make good decisions. And the world, the peace of the world is at stake. Everybody knows it is. It's,
And, Hamas is not good for the Palestinians
no.
Right,
either.
right.
But they have no choice. They are doubly imprisoned.
Right.
Right.
They're actually imprisoned in Gaza. And then they're imprisoned by Hamas, they didn't elect those people. Those people took over. And is there sympathy on the part of the Palestinians? Some of them for them? Because sometimes that's who feeds you.
Right.
That's who
Right.
gives you
Well, that's
something.
right. They're the ones
Right.
that make you be able to live.
But it's also the ones who are gonna make you die.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
now you're gonna, so it's like, I just feel sorry for everyone all the way around.
I do too.
Because there's
It
no
is-
good gonna come of it.
No, there is not. I believe that. There's nothing good that's going to come out of it.
And now they have extra security around all the synagogues. And I'm wondering, will they have extra security around the mosques now? Do we feel comfortable going in hijab into the mosque? Here we go again.
Well,
Every time something happens.
we've all learned that it's over there, but it's not over there. It's over
No.
here.
Right.
It's here. It's all around us. And the world is not big anymore. So,
It's full of a lot of nuts with guns lately.
yeah.
Too many people have guns. And, we just had at the mosque this past Ramadan, a gun scare. Somebody reported somebody with a gun near the mosque. The whole thing shut down. Everybody's, don't let anybody leave. There's a gunman outside. Turns out it was nothing. Somebody thought they saw something, but this is what happens.
Yeah, you can't wait. You can't risk not saying something and then moving to defensive posture.
So this is the world we live in. Everybody is looking at each other like, can I trust you? Can I, it's terrible.
Can we move on to some good news?
Isaiah
Where's the
wasn't
good
very
news?
comforting today.
No, it's not comforting. Come on, Isaiah.
Let's go back
Isaiah,
to Ruth.
yeah, Isaiah does promise deliverance.
Yep, there's the good parts. We'll get to them.
Our
Eventually.
day will come. Keep hope alive.
Well, I think it's a hard time right now to be optimistic.
It is.
In some ways, it feels almost disingenuous to not in some way empathetically take on the grief of these families and to carry their grief. Because it's bad. It's bad. And I don't mean just the grief of Israelis. I mean the grief of Palestinians who are living and their children. I mean, it's terrible. It is terrible. I'm sorry. Today is, we're living in a week of not good things.
There were a lot of stories about Israelis trapped, not able to fly out. Israelis with dual citizenship, or Americans who were
Right.
visiting. And then they had a young woman, a young Palestinian woman, who was obviously in Gaza, and she was there with her 2 kids visiting, and she couldn't fly out either. And she was saying, I'm trying to get in touch with because she's an American citizen, with the State Department. I'm trying to get a flight out. I'm trying to see if the government will help us. And as she's speaking, you hear, boom, and she goes, that's it, and then she keeps speaking. It's like, how do you deal with this?
Right.
And you forget that there's people on both sides that are hurting and in trouble, and I don't know anybody personally who has relatives in Gaza. I do know West Bank Palestinians, which is better off, but they have Hezbollah in the north from Lebanon coming now. You have to worry about them. But then I have all my Jewish friends. My friend Lori, her son-in-law was just called up as a reservist.
Yeah, they've called everybody up.
So,
I don't know what that's going to lead
trying to
to.
keep in touch with her.
Well, we'll just pray for peace.
Yeah.
Just figure out how to pray for peace and pray for wiser minds to prevail.
But the thing is, then people turn right around and say, well, we're voting for Trump.
You know?
That's the opposite direction as far as I'm concerned. Pray for peace, but I like Trump.
All right, well,
Everybody's got troubles.
I'm gonna keep doing my part in the little corner of the world I live in.
Amen.
Yes,
That's all we
that's
can
what
do.
you can do, right?
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. To those of you who are on the streaming, we'll be back next week, both Tuesday night and Wednesday morning again. I never checked to see if anybody signed in on Zoom, but I don't think.
You know, I'm wondering what happened to Colette. She doesn't usually.
Well,
post
you know,
photos.
I've been in conversation with Colette. I don't know if you remember, but that one Bible study, she talked about the rain was coming in her
Right.
house.
Right.
So I went home, I couldn't sleep that night. I called her up. I went over and looked at her roof, and I had her roof fixed.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was insane what she was doing. She's a very tiny little house.
Right. Buckets.
She was doing this, but
Yeah.
let me tell you, she had a small step ladder. The leak was in her clothes closet, one of these sliding. The water was coming down from her roof onto her clothes. So she put a plastic container up on the hat shelf in the closet, and the water was being caught in that. She's up on the,
And she who can't walk well is
right,
standing
she's
up.
up on the ladder. She knows she can't lift this thing down, so what does she do? Very ingenious. She has 5 or 6 water bottles, you know, the little, and she's got them tied together around the neck. So she's standing up on the ladder. She takes a water bottle, submerges it in the big tank,
Oh,
pulls it out, takes another one, submerges that.
and she takes the water
She
bottle.
fills 5 water bottles and then makes her way down the step and then goes to the sink and empties them. She did that all night long.
You know how exhausting? Yeah.
I just said to her, I said, Colette, you can't do this. And she's like, well, you know, she's very, like, well, that's just what I have to do. I mean, I can't carry that big one. Okay. I said, I'm gonna get up on the roof and I'm gonna look to see where the water's coming from. And this guy, Ray, who's been our lifesaver for all kinds of things, I said, I'm gonna call my friend Ray and have him come over and look at it and see if he can fix it. Well, he went and looked at it. He wouldn't take any money at all for fixing it, not even for the materials.
How sweet.
I love that guy. And I knew he's got a heart as big as the sun.
Yeah.
And when you meet Colette and you see that situation and you go,
Yeah.
yeah, I got a crew of 4 or 5 guys that come over here and in 2 hours we can fix this. And that's what he did.
That's great.
It's just, so
Oh,
I know that she got her roof leak fixed because I called her, you know, when it started raining again.
yeah.
I called her during one rainstorm and said, Colette, please tell me that your roof is not leaking. And she goes, it's not. It's doing quite well.
Good.
So there's something good in the world, right?
Want those good news stories.
Because
And-
sometimes knowing too much about the whole world,
Right.
you forget that, you know,
Right, you
there's
forget about the
something-
good things that are happening.
Right,
You know,
right.
it made me cry when he went over there and then he said, look, I'm not taking any money for this. He goes, this woman needs help.
Yeah,
And
sweet.
thank you, Ray.
Right.
You've restored my faith. Yeah, you've restored my faith in the world. Okay, you too.